this. I find that when I speak at a New Thought church, or when I speak on Christian holidays, I tend to use Jesus and the Bible a lot more than I often use in my sermons. But this is a particular day we're celebrating. And I think that we can look at Jesus's triumphant, entry into Jerusalem as how is that influenced? Looking at how are we surrendering our attachments to the physical world? How are we engaging our connection with the divine in a way that transforms us? So we see Jesus as the way-shower, a big brother of sorts that was able to, completely be aware of his connection with and move in the physical world, understanding and being aware of that connection. So in John 12, he says, "He who believes in me believes not in me, but him who sent me. He who sees me sees him who sent me." So he is completely connected to the divine. And he is showing us that we also can be completely connected to the divine. We are God in the physical form. So the universe, God is everything. And at one point, let there be light. That moment, God decided to okay, let's play in this physical world. What is the physical experience like? And so we are aspects of God moving in the physical world. So through us, God is expressed. So in John 14, he says, "Most assuredly I say to you, he who believes in me," or as we had just learned, he who sent me, "the works that I do, he will do also, and he will do greater things than these." So we have the same ability to heal, to do these miracles that Jesus did. We just aren't there yet. But yes, but the Jesus is not the exception, but the example. So he can do these things and greater things. So let's talk about the power of belief, because it's he who believes in me, right? It's that belief that shifts things. So in Mark 11, he says, "Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." So over and over again, Jesus performs these healings, these miracles, and he tells the person that was just healed, it's their belief that they made them well. There was a woman who had been hemorrhaging for 12 years, and she thought if she just could touch the hem of his garment, that she would be healed. And he, instead, before he gets there, he turns around and he says to her, "Daughter, take courage, your faith has made you well." And at once the wound was healed. And then again, there were blind men that came to him, and he asks them, do you believe that this is possible? And he touches, they say yes, and he touches their eyes, and he says, "It shall be done for you according to your faith." And their eyes were. So having the belief, having this faith is what shifts us from seeing the physical world as we see it right now, with the problems and the illnesses and the things that we don't necessarily want. And the faith that the divine can change that according to our belief. And it's a practice, right? It's we all come with our strengths and weaknesses, our unconscious beliefs about things. I love the movie The Matrix, and there's a scene in The Matrix where, it's all fake. He knows it's fake intellectually, and he's told to jump off a building, right? Like, what do you do? And he lands on the ground. They're like, what would happen if? But we have these beliefs. So when we are stretched, when we are asked to believe in something that seems impossible, it's a practice to kind of keep bringing back to it. The disciples were out on a boat. Jesus sent them out, and a storm came, and it was blowing. The waves were going in, and there was a figure that approached them, and they were terrified. They thought it was a ghost, this thing coming out of the darkness over the water. And then they discovered it's Jesus. And Peter said, ask me to come out, and I'm going to come to you. And he climbs, Jesus said, come, and he climbs out of the boat and walks to Jesus. And then the waves come, and he gets scared, and he starts to sink and calls for help from Jesus. And Jesus told him out. He said, you have little faith. Why would you doubt? We're walking on the water, and then we think this isn't possible, and we sink, and then we can be pulled out to try again. We've been kind of experiencing this up and down in our household. So my husband Jim was laid off. His whole department, the whole section group was outsourced, and so he's been looking for work. And there are times when it's super easy to go, yes, of course, that perfect job is there. We know that this is a divine plan, that this, or something better. It's like opening a door, because he would have stayed there forever. So this is a way for him to shift into something. And then we have those moments of oh gosh, what's going to happen? Our water heater just went out, and we have some expenses that we weren't expecting, and there is that. Here we are in the physical world, sort of sinking doubt that happens. So it's about catching ourselves when we start to think that way. Shifting is responsible. Marianne Williamson, where is that? Says that fear is trusting in your own power. And I love that, because what it is when you have fear, you're not bringing the faith that there is a divine, being, moving in your life, creating your experience. So fear is only when you believe in that little self of you, something that you can accomplish. And we can live our lives that way, only accomplishing what we, only stepping out, doing what we know we can do on our own. I tend to be one of those people that wants to, they call it a lone ranger. Like I want to do these things. I'm making videos on YouTube, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to pay for music anymore. I'm going to make my own. It's that kind of thing. But a big dream, a dream that is the calling of you, something that you're going to manifest in the world, that has to be bigger than you. It has to be, or it's not really your divine destiny. So shifting to that other dream, shifting to something and knowing that the divine is not bad. And I know that for me, that those things are divinely seated. That if I have this calling, this urge, I can know that, when that yes feeling, when you think about doing something and you're like, and it's expansive. It's not constricted with fear, but it's expansive. That's the divine seed in you. And it can be easier to have faith in following that, because it's divinely seeded. Oh, this is God's idea, it's not mine. It makes it easier to step out. But it also makes it easier for the fear to come, because you want it so bad. And so that, trying to find that balance of, staying in that dream, in the vision and the faith, knowing that the divine is going to be there for you, and moving in through it and letting go of that. Oh, I love this quote. I don't want to skip it. The rapper 50 Cent has this thing. He said, either pray or worry, don't do both. And he goes on to say that, basically it's as if you're doubting God. If you pray, he explained how he was afraid of flying. And so he's having a prayer on the plane. And then, if you then still stay here, what are you saying to God? You're like, oh, I don't really believe that, that prayer works. So when you stay in that, you have this vision, you have a prayer that you're holding to trust that the divine is going to be there in that process. And sometimes we try to control or direct God, right? We have this idea of what we want. And many years ago, I was working with a woman who was new to New Thought, the idea that she could co-create with the divine, that prayer was actually a two-way street. You didn't just say what you wanted and forget it, that you could listen to the answer. And so she was kind of navigating her way in this, and she wanted to find love in her. And so she knew that she could manifest anything she wanted. The problem that she was finding was that she wanted to compel God and a particular person to love her. And she had like, that's the one I want, and it wasn't working. So, it's easy to kind of have our sights on something. My a woman that was my grandmother figure in my life when I was very little had told me a story of when her grandmother asked her to go get a handful of sand. And this little child goes and she grabs a handful of sand, and so she comes back and she opens her hand and there's like a little line of sand in the middle of it there. And so then her grandmother says, go get a handful of sand like this. So she goes and she's shocked, that she's remembered this story her whole life, and is telling me, and I remembered it in my life, that, with an open hand, there's more abundance. So Ernest Holmes, the founder of the Spiritual Center, Life Center, what are they now? Centers for Spiritual Living, there it is, thank you. He uses the idea of choosing an outline. That we choose as human beings, we're co-creating with the divine. We choose what it is we want. We want love. We want a job for Jim. We want whatever it is that we want. And we can, it's helpful to be as specific as possible. Like with Jim, we're visualizing that, the pay is a certain pay, that the colleagues, we really enjoy being with them, and the work situation is we want to be mostly remote because we live on Mount Hood and we want to drive to wherever. But certain things, so we have these are the things we're choosing, but we're doing it with an open. And then God does the outcome. So Ernest Holmes uses the idea of a tomato seed. We choose to plant a tomato seed, but we don't get to choose how many branches it has, how many flowers it has, how many fruit it provides. So we do the choosing and God does the outcome, because we don't know. I mean, the divine plan, they have this web that can be woven with people, and other people want something else, and it's working, and they find that. This last week Jim had a job offer that we were really kind of excited about. It was sort of a stretch. It was a different thing for him to be doing. He was going to be mentoring other software engineers, and he's really good at that. So we thought, it's perfect. And then this week we found out that wasn't going to happen. And so, it was disappointing. It's like, oh, we were hoping for that. But we know that there is an opening that is perfect for him. That job is perfect for someone else. I think there's a lot of us and then thinking in our culture these days. And I remember 3 years ago, we were selling our house. We had a house in West Lynn, and we knew we wanted to move out of the city. We didn't know where. We didn't have our house. We haven't found our house. We kissed a lot of frogs. We'd seen a lot of houses that were not what we wanted. We hadn't found our house, but we thought if we needed to, when we found that house, we needed to have the money to pay for it, like immediately, because the housing market was going fast. So we put the house on the market, and we priced it at a way that we thought would sell quick. We looked at the neighborhood, the condition of the house, the square footage, all of those things, and we had it priced low on that spectrum. So we ended up getting one offer, and once we'd taken that offer, the people they wanted a lot of different things done. And the big thing was they wanted a new deck. And we had, sanded the deck and put some new boards on and painted it, and it was all, fresh and new looking. But it wasn't, it was perfectly serviceable for us. We had used it, and it was fine. And I felt like we had priced it, knowing that the deck was in that range. So a new deck was expensive, and I was really kind of in this sort of yucky, selfish, like, if I pay that much money for the deck, I'm going to be getting that much money, less money out of the house, and it's kind of in this sort of yucky, selfishness sort of space. And I was standing on the then deck, looking out into our yard, and we made a fir forest. So we had 5 fir trees when we moved. They're big, really big fir trees, and it's a foot of ivy. Foot of ivy. We pulled all the ivy out, and we spent years and many hours planting hundreds of native plants. We had 3 different kinds of huckleberries, ferns, rhododendrons, some trillium, and it was this beautiful little oasis in the city. And I was standing there thinking, this family that is moving in is going to sit here and have dinner and look out over this beautiful little forest. And I got really excited for that. And that shifted me. And I was like, yeah, I want them to have this new deck so that they could really enjoy being out here in the yard and experience that. And in that shift, what happened for us was then we found a house. Like, it shifted for me, and then we found, which is like way beyond anything we possibly could have dreamed. It is the most beautiful house I've ever been for us. Like, if you knew us and you knew that house, you'd be like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. So as we begin to celebrate other people's wins, we begin to manifest our. The man who wrote The Science of Getting Rich, Wallace Wattles, called it being a person of increase, really wishing well, and not just like, oh, I'm so glad, but really that, wow, that's so wonderful that, that they have this deck now. The person who got the job that we wanted for Jim, that, that's going to be the perfect fit for them. And isn't it wonderful that they, that we don't know about their family or who they are, but we can celebrate that person's win and not be jealous or not be separative of like, oh, I'm getting less because they have, because the divine, we are all connected and we all win. Once upon a time, there was a thriving monastery. And this thriving monastery over the years was neglected and started dying out. And there were, at this point in the story, there were 5 monks that had survived, that were living, an abbot and 4 monks. And they were all over the age of 70. And the buildings were starting to fall apart. The landscape hadn't been taken care of. And the monks were really worried that the whole thing was going to just die out with them. This beautiful sanctuary place that's vibrant to heaven. So the abbot knew that there was a very wise rabbi that went to a little hut in the woods on occasion to meditate and to have some solitude. And he thought, I'm going to go and see if this rabbi has any advice for me to help save his monks. And the rabbi welcomed him in, and they had, as soon as the rabbi learned that what the abbot did, they, I need some Just sorry. I have a problem with it. So the rabbi was like, I don't have any advice. I'm sorry. The spirit has gone out of the people. They don't come to synagogue anymore either. And so the two of them spent the afternoon crying about how things are and reading the Torah and singing together. And the abbot said, thanks the rabbi for this day. Beautiful. Thank you so much for this. But I still haven't gotten a solution. You sure you don't have any advice for me? And he said, no, I don't have any advice for you. The only thing I can tell you is that the Messiah is with you. And the others. So he went back, told the monks about what he had experienced and what the rabbi had said, that the Messiah was one of them. And this kind of sat with them for a while, and after weeks, after months, they each individually started really thinking about what that would mean. So, if the Messiah was one of us, it's probably the abbot, because he's been our leader for so long, and that's probably who it is. But then, Brother Christopher, he is obviously a holy man. He's a man of light, and he is Christopher. And couldn't be Joseph. Brother Joseph is so crotchety and cranky and grumpy, but think about it. He's always right. Maybe, and this went on, and could it be me? Like, it can't be me. I'm just a person, and I couldn't be me. And then, could it be this for you? And so they started treating each other with a little more respect. The possibility that one of them could be the Messiah, and even themselves, they started respecting themselves. And the grounds, even though they were overgrown, they still were really beautiful. People came to picnic there. They would sit in the chapel, even though it was falling apart, to pray. And the people who did come noticed this shift in energy and how it felt bigger, it felt more welcoming. There was something different. They couldn't put their finger on. And they would they would invite their friends there, and then their friends would bring their friends. And the young men started walking with the old monks and talking on their paths about God and life and things. And then one day, one of the men asked if he could join their monastery. And then another, and then another. And within 2 years, it was this thriving, beautiful community. Because they were all transformed by the basic idea that the divine was within them, was in this place. And the sun rises on all of us. We are all loved by the divine equally. And we all have that ability to connect with. And on Palm Sunday, it's not this worldly triumph, but really a deep surrender to a spiritual realization that we are some. Jesus, as the way shower, calls us to faith, to deepening that faith, that trust, that as we step out of the boat, that we will be able to perform these miracles. And it can be scary, even if we can't see it, that our attachments limit our possibilities. As I'm clinging to something, being a certain way, that is what's going to limit. I'm the one who limits God, not God. And when we begin to surrender and to trust, that's when our worlds open and the divine can move these miracles into our lives. The fact that the house. So not just when it's easy, but even when the storms rage and we sink with doubt, knowing that the divine moves through us at every moment. and that our beliefs and our faith are what shape our experience. So as we leave here today, I want to invite you to walk with the awareness that we are all expressions of to see the light in one another, that divine spark in each of us. We are created individually on purpose with all of our constellations of who, our background, our talents, our interests, the experiences we've had. We're all unique. And the divine brings all of those unique threads to make this beautiful life. So as we honor the sacredness in ourselves as well as one another, like the monks, when we treat each other with reverence, we transform not only our own lives, but the world itself.